Dana, last time we were chatting with you, you're our favorite apocalyptic optimist.
Aren't I the only apocalyptic optimist?
I feel like you've built a bit of a movement around it, but you were like the OG and you're our fave, and I still cannot say it without, it's like a tongue twister for me.
Yep.
So much of what you do intersects with democracy, citizens, movements. I want to talk about that today.
Beautiful.
I know it's something you've been working on. You're based in the US. If there was ever a place that's having a democratic crisis,
yes,
in front of our eyes in real time, I wonder if since we last talked, will you just tell us like how your work has evolved in relation to how the world has evolved?
Oh yeah. I mean, so it's so funny because when Saving Ourselves came out, which is where I started talking about being an apocalyptic optimist, which led to my TED Talk on it. I did all these conversations with people where they said, well, what's going to happen with the 2024 election? And in fact, we did our conversation the week before the 2024
I remember.
election. And at the time I said, well, in some ways, if we get another Trump administration, we're going to get to the apocalypse a lot faster.
Yeah.
And I would always say that it's going to be really tough. It's going to be painful, but it actually will mobilize the masses and motivate people to start to work together in solidarity. And that's the good side. The silver lining is that's exactly what we're seeing in the United States.
Okay.
And I've been doing a lot of work around that, but at the same time, it also is just like the acceleration of the poly crisis, the acceleration of the climate crisis, thankfully driven by my country. Not only have we canceled all of the incremental policies that we've implemented around climate, not only are we canceling all efforts at a clean energy transition. I mean, the administration is doing as much as it can. And of course, Bill McKibben was here today not today, but this week talking about clean energy. And it's true that clean energy is fighting back, right? Because it's so cheap. And I got to say, as somebody who has only EVs, right now, I'm just so,
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
But so
and
the
there's
thing,
states work happening, but like the narrative is all gone.
Oh, I mean, it's all gone. I mean, and like Donald Trump's administration is paying billions of dollars to cancel wind energy. And these are programs that were actually at the building stage. I mean, it's remarkable. And it's cheaper, it's safer, it's cleaner. I mean, it's
is energy sovereignty. So you actually if you are like I don't know.
The problem, though, is that the United States has an energy sovereignty, and our energy sovereignty is fossil fuel based.
Okay.
And the people who paid to get Donald Trump into office are those sovereigns, right? And so they want to maintain the fossil fuel grip on power in our country, and they're doing it. So the thing is that we're seeing that happen. We also are seeing this outrageous. We have fought many wars actually since we last spoke.
Yes.
I mean, and now we
Who
see.
could imagine so many?
I know. I mean, that one I didn't like. If you had asked me to predict the future, I would have predicted that he would do everything he could to get rid of the Inflation Reduction Act, to get rid of clean energy transitions in the United States. I didn't think he'd be as successful as he is, and that's because our Congress has really rolled over.
Agreed. They've completely abdicated all power.
And
all independence.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. So I did not expect that. But I also did not expect us to go to war. I mean, and now we're having this crazy fossil fuel war, and just the fossil fuel, I mean, the carbon footprint of war, as you know, is just horrible. So not only are we walking back on clean energy transitions, we're also just
burning stuff.
Am I allowed to say blowing shit up? We're just like blowing shit up. So we basically we're doing so much to waste money, waste carbon, and to make everything worse. So that's where we are now, so that's the apocalyptic part, right?
Yeah.
But there's the optimism, which of course that's my brand, is like, it's bad and we have to be realistic about it. But the good silver lining about that is that we see people rising up and pushing back. And it's a lot easier to do that when there's a common enemy. And there is quite the enemy right now.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing in the United States is this resistance that's rising up.
Yeah.
And so my book before Saving Ourselves was called American Resistance, which was based on research from the people protesting during the first Trump administration.
Yeah.
During the first Trump administration, we saw these large-scale protests that happened in urban areas, and I tracked all the people who protested there and followed them through the electoral process to see how they brought on what we call the blue wave, which was bringing into power the Democrats again, who theoretically were going to, save us from ourselves, which, works out. I mean, there's a lot of critiques we can give for that. This time around, we're seeing something really different because what we're seeing. Oh, sorry.
Just because of
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you. This time around, we're seeing something really different in that we're seeing a much more distributed movement where the movement is really embedded in communities, which is so much better and so much stronger.
Okay.
It's a lot harder to count, right? Because you don't see like millions of people in
Right.
one place.
Yeah.
But we're seeing thousands of events taking place simultaneously. And we've had multiple days of action where you've seen millions of people in the streets. We also now have a general strike called for May 1st. First general strike in the United States that's been called by a big coalition of folks since like the 1970s.
Yeah.
And I'm actually working with the organizers on that
wow.
to try to understand who's participating. But there are thousands of events that are being scheduled, and I think that's going to continue growing.
Do you feel, because there's this like not contradiction, but there's this tension, right, where you've got the work happening in the community at the grassroots, which you have written about and spoken about, is so powerful because it's so connected,
Right.
it's so rooted, but then there's like a perception problem, because then if you can't see it, do people feel isolated? Do people feel alone? Is that why having like National Day of Action is so important?
Well, I think the problem is that, one, we see people getting involved, but they're not very well connected yet. Okay. That's still happening, and it's starting at the local level, which is so much better than it being top down, because in the communities is where the social change has to happen.
Yeah.
So that's really good, but we still need more.
Yeah.
And so these days of action, it's funny because I just got like all this hate mail because I said in the New York Times that these days of action are these opportunities to develop what we call collective identity, which is like a technical term in the social movements literature, but collective identity is going somewhere to see that you're not alone, which is such an important emotional component of activism and protest and anything, right? And all these people were like, how dare you say that we're just out there to feel like we're not alone? I was like, But
that's so important.
I know. I was like, but not being alone is part of like social change. We need to not be alone. We need to work together, and going out and being somewhere where you see other people and then you build more because you realize you're not alone is so key. So it was interesting because I was like, I don't see anything critical about it. Well, it was funny. This blogger I'd never heard of who has thousands and thousands of followers, he kind of doxed me. He minorly doxed me by giving everyone my email and being like, Dana Fisher needs to spend some time at a protest. And I'm like,
okay,
really?
Dana Fisher spent a lot of freaking time at a protest.
Dana Fisher's been in protests for 26 years plus. And I was like, I've been to all of these. I actually have the data. And the thing is that building collective identity is like a key part of being able to push back to power.
Yes.
Particularly because in the United States, it is very clear that the electoral process is not going to fix the problem alone. We need more than that, and that's what has to happen at the local level.
I sometimes feel when people critique this way, it's because they are so sheltered.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I come from Iran.
I'm sorry.
And that's a whole other conversation we can have.
Right.
But
I hope
before,
you don't have a lot of family there.
No, none.
My
none.
postdoc is actually, his whole family is in Iran.
That must be. It's a parallel life you lead where you like do your life every day, and then this is what Palestinians have been talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
You live your life every day, and then half your life you're just, in a constant state of like freeze or flight or fight or whatever it might be.
Right.
But even before this war, like, let's just go back. I think the thing is that people do not value how critical it is to actually be able to come out and connect with another human being, unless it feels like unless you have come from a context where that is punishable by death. Yeah. It's like crazy to me that people can't see how important that is.
I agree with you. I think also that there is so I ended up writing this piece based on the data that we collected that guy didn't actually know that I was doing that, didn't recognize. And this was one of the most recent No Kings Day. So it was No Kings 3. And I wrote about the strength of building social ties at the local level. So the strength of local ties, because that is part of building solidarity. And solidarity is absolutely necessary, particularly because what we're seeing now in the United States is we're seeing repression. We're seeing a very big threat of escalation. We're seeing martyrdom for the first time in the streets.
Because I said that people don't get killed on the streets. They obviously do get killed on the streets in America too. Like it has been happening.
This is a new turn. This is people. People have been killed in the streets, But I think that we're going to see a lot more of that, which is horrible.
Yes.
And again, this is one of those times where I'm like, I'm not saying it's good. I'm observing it. And I also have been in my research documenting both what people in the streets are willing to do, what they think is needed, and sentiment that political violence is going to be necessary to protect American democracy has gone up substantially since Trump took office.
You mentioned solidarity. Solidarity is something I think we don't talk enough about in the climate movement.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite stories, like as a young activist when I was, much younger, the thing that there are stories that just stay with you, was in the UK in the 80s. I mean, I was before I was around, so I can't look at it exactly. But there was obviously the miners' strikes, 80s and early 90s. I was very young. And there was a group of queer activists from London who got on a bus and went to rural Wales. Am I making this up? Somewhere.
Okay.
And to stand in solidarity with the miners. And
gave me a little bit of chills there, just.
And I just thought to myself, that for me was just so formative. And I feel we've lost it.
Oh, I absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that we're still not seeing enough of in the streets. I mean, and one of the things that I do is I document the demographics of protest.
Yes.
I mean, and I did this around the climate movement, and now we're seeing that the resistance in the United States, generally at the national level, is overwhelmingly highly educated, predominantly white, and left-leaning. Which, I mean, left-leaning, of course, that makes sense. Although you need more people from the center to get involved, and Trump's doing a great job of helping that because his numbers are collapsing.
Yeah, because
and he's now
economics is a great way to put pressure on the center, make people's lives harder, and they'll come out.
And attacking the Pope too.
Yeah,
that's another
fantastic.
Because 1 in 5 people in the United States are Catholic, so maybe that's not a good thing.
Yeah, interesting.
So in terms of thinking about building solidarity, the way that I think about it, and a lot of the research thinks about it, is solidarity across identity, orientation, and social class.
Yes.
The strongest and most effective movements do that.
Yeah.
The climate movement was starting to do that and really has gotten sucked into this wave of resistance in the United States, which makes sense.
Yes.
Because when democracy is crumbling, it's really hard to only focus on climate. But a lot of groups are recognizing that it's part of the poly crisis, because without economic justice, without racial justice, without solidarity, how can you protect the climate?
Right. Let's talk about this, Dana.
Okay.
Let's talk about this. This is my biggest bugbear.
Okay.
And I think you will have the smartest things to say about this, so I'm excited.
I hope so. Okay.
I just am so... I never stop being shocked when I have conversations with people in the climate movement who say, yeah, of course I believe in equity and indigenous rights and blah, 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 and justice, but we don't have time for that. Or say things to me where they feel they're a bit more sophisticated, look, we've got to learn to work with reform in the UK. We've got to learn to work with Trump. These people are in power, and we have to, if it means we have to sacrifice things like justice and equity, we got to do it to get those wind turbines built. Obviously, that it hurts my brain.
Yeah.
But I haven't spent 25
too,
yes,
right?
But I haven't spent 25 years of my life or more being, studying this stuff deeply. Why is that? Am I right to feel in my bones that is not the right path?
Well, I completely agree with you, but I believe in systemic change, right?
Okay, so talk to us about that.
So systemic change means that we need to recognize that a true addressing of the climate crisis is breaking up this system that has captured us, which is fossil fuel driven and is incredibly unequal, right? And the problem is we've seen a growth in inequality, a growth in political polarization, and fossil fuel interests have a stranglehold on decision making intentionally, right? I mean, they bought it so that they can control it. And, and that's why we're opening up coal mines again in the United States, because that's a winning move.
Paying for it. Yeah.
Literally
the economics don't work.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't work at all. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's where we are. So there are people in the world who believe that we can maintain the same status quo, the same social hierarchies, and address climate change.
Yes.
And I like to think of them as what I call incrementalists.
Yes.
They believe in this incremental change where we don't change the system, we don't become more equal. we just become cleaner.
Yes.
And that's where you see a lot of this idea of technological innovation that can solve the problem without doing any of the hard work.
And has not been where the climate movement was for a very long time, it feels, and was changing.
Yes, so the climate movement was there.
Yeah.
The climate movement started to change, I believe, when we saw a lot with the school strikes, with Fridays for Future. I mean, we can thank Greta, but there were young people all over the world who were involved in this. So I don't want to say, and I know Greta would herself not say that it's very clearly.
But the idea of like the youth voice globally coming in.
Right, and some of the work that I did was actually looking at kind of the main issues there. And while we see that for other movements, there's a diversity of perspectives, there was a lot of consistency within the climate movement during that period of time that justice and equity were main themes along with climate change within the movement. Now, I also observed how a lot of what we call in the United States the big greens, which are these professionalized groups, really, how do I say this? They, I don't want to say they exploited the young people, but they, in a lot of...
as a means to an end, maybe?
Well, it was more like they wanted to take advantage of the popularity and the notoriety of young people and youth activists.
Without signing up to...
Without actually embracing the type of change. Right. I mean, unfortunately, I think we really saw that during the Biden administration, where the Biden administration came into power. They actually were able to take advantage of young people, many of whom were climate activists, who got involved in helping to campaign for Biden. Yeah. And Biden said that he was going to do a whole bunch of things. And what he ended up doing in the end, and he didn't have the political capacity to do everything he said he was going to do, he ended up with a very weak policy, which did involve more climate policy than we ever had in the United States before. It also gave away a whole bunch of resources and money to fossil fuel interests.
Yes, that was a compromise, right? Yeah,
super compromise, super incremental.
Yeah.
And the young people got kind of screwed in the whole process.
I mean, because I think there was like definitely, I remember, because I've not been involved in this movement for very long, but I came in around that time and I remember thinking like, wow, there's a really big burden that we're putting on these young people.
Oh, yeah. They were really fetishized, right? They were really like, oh, look, we're holding up this,
they did the
multiracial justice and climate activists, and you should buy our product. Yeah. And obviously, then we're legit with our perspective without actually embracing it and bringing it into the message of the movement. And it ended up, I think it really backfired for them because a lot of young people got very involved and engaged and motivated by protesting the war in Gaza.
Yes.
And they were really repressed. Yeah. I mean, if we saw what happened on college campuses across the United States, the repression was outrageous.
And in the UK.
And in the UK. I mean, we saw it in a lot of places. I mean, so it's funny because I used to be on the faculty at Columbia. Okay. And every year we had encampments on campus. I mean, and I taught activism right on campus. So I always had these activists in my class. And I would always walk across the green to go to teach. And there's always some of my student pops out of a tent and it's like, hey, Professor Fisher, I'll see you in class. And I'm like, don't forget to do the reading. I'm sure you've got a battery light so you can do your reading at night, right? And they're like, see you there, right? So
it was part of college life.
Completely part of the college culture, right? I mean, we had campus when I was in college. Yeah. I mean, I didn't go to Columbia, but so the fact that this one time they were so repressive, they brought in police. And I just was on this event in New York City last week where one of the leaders of the movement on Columbia's campus was talking about the ways that he has felt like he has been surveilled and scrutinized, and it's amazing that he's been able to graduate. So many young people got turned off. So between the incremental policy making, the ways that youth activists were treated, we did not see young people turn out for Harris during the most recent election, and that's one of the reasons that's one of the reasons that Trump won.
Yes.
And why Harris lost. And we are no longer seeing young people in the streets protesting in the United States. Yeah. We're not seeing them protesting on college campuses because they're terrified and they feel completely disconnected.
It comes back to solidarity in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like you used these people for what you wanted. You did not stand up for them. Why on earth would you think that they would come back out for you?
And if you're going to let police, am I allowed to say beat the shit out of you? Okay, if you're going to let
if it's happened, you can say
if you're going to let the police come in, clear young people and beat the shit out of them, which quite frankly happened on a number of college campuses, if you're going to let that happen and not stand up and push back to that, then what makes you think that, because that's what solidarity is about.
Yeah.
Solidarity is about standing up for and
Yeah.
protecting young people.
I mean,
and the overlap, just so
Yeah.
you know, like the overlap between the young people who were caring about climate and were caring about the war in Gaza was very, very high. So these were climate activists, many of them.
I mean, yeah, I always find it, what I found bizarre, I always find bizarre, is this idea that we teach these things. Like because I went to high school in New York, and, you know, so I have like a
Oh,
deep...
really? Okay,
yeah.
so you were in high school in New York,
Yeah,
and
so I
then
have
you were in
like,
London?
and then I was in Canada for a while, so I have this like deep like embedding in like North American politics and
Okay.
that. You know, I remember we learned about Kent State.
Uh-huh.
You know, and even before that, you learn about the suffragists, you learn about Martin Luther King Jr., you learn about all of these people. And then in our higher education institutions particularly, and then we're like, what, fucking surprised that the very young people were teaching about like civil disobedience and resistance. I mean, you were teaching activism. Employ it?
Yeah, yeah.
It just, I could not understand why people were so shocked it was happening. It's like, you're teaching it. Like,
Well, I mean, I completely agree, but I also am very worried about making. I mean, as somebody who teaches activism, I worry about saying, "Oh, it's because they're being taught
no,
that."
it's not because they're being
Yeah.
taught it, but we hold it up as like a idea. Like we
talk
we
about it, but
respect it. We think it's a good thing, but only if it happened historically.
But what I think is really interesting is when we teach history, and there's some really wonderful work that's been done about this, we really have whitewashed and greenwashed these movements and the grittiness of what civil disobedience involves. I mean, one of the things that I ended up talking a lot with, and I talked a lot with the folks at Extinction Rebellion about this in the past few years, because they were like, but we got arrested. And it's like, yeah, do you know what happened during the civil rights movement? During the civil rights movement, so many leaders, they were arrested. I mean, and Martin Luther King Jr. was like, we want to fill the jails. I mean, that was one of the tactics employed by the movement.
Completely.
I mean, but also a lot of people were beaten up, and there were people who were murdered.
Yeah.
And that is the grittiness of social change. And I am not saying that activists should go, you know, get beaten up, be imprisoned, be murdered, but that is likely the price that we are going to have to pay for the kinds of systemic changes we need.
What do you see as the biggest threats to democracy right now in America? Like, what? Or no, I mean, obviously it's Trump, but like, what are the like things you are seeing happening that you think are going to have the biggest impacts, the biggest effect on democracy?
Well, I mean, I think there's a complacency that is a real problem, because right now we have a number of bills that have been pushed through and proposed by Republicans in Congress that will take away rights in ways that many people are not even understanding.
Yeah.
For example, there's this SAVE Act, which if it's implemented, I don't know if you want me to talk about this because it's like timely, it may be dead, hopefully be dead. But
I mean, you talk about it. Let's see.
Okay, I mean, but so there's this act which actually will require people to have documentation. If people, women may very well lose the ability to vote if they don't have proper documentation, if they changed their names when they got married.
Yes, I've heard about this.
Right. I mean, but it's also just there's going to be so much more requirements for documentation to be allowed to participate in our democratic system, which is the exact opposite of supporting participation, right? Because if you want to support participation, you make it easier for people to participate. Here, the administration and the Republicans are pushing to limit participation, because that way they don't have to say that they can say, oh, well, we had free and fair elections.
Yes.
Most people just weren't eligible to vote because they didn't do it right because we changed the rules. Yeah. So that's a horrible threat. And I fear that a lot of people are not going to recognize this until it is already passed.
Yes.
I mean, and this is the same thing as I talk about, and I find with the climate movement, is that when we really see the kind of mobilization and pushback to the climate crisis is after people experience the climate crisis firsthand. Right. I mean, once you experience a climate shock, there's so much growing research that talks about how people push back and mobilize and build solidarity. And it may very well be that it's not until we lose a whole bunch of our democratic capacity that people start to do that. It's not until, I mean, one beautiful thing that we've seen recently is the way that the folks in Minnesota and in Portland and other cities have pushed back when they've been occupied by the administration, by federal agents, which, like the fact that we have these crazy unnamed masked agents running around in our country disappearing people.
It's a paramilitary. It's like
I mean,
a parallel military,
I mean, if we had talked about this when we were at TED Countdown in 2024, and you said, "Guess what's going to happen? I'll tell you what's going to happen in your country," I would have been like, "No way." I'm going to call BS on that. There's no way that's going to happen in my country, even if Trump's elected. But no, I mean, that is the world we're living in. But the communities and the ways that the communities have built these mutual aid networks to protect the people in their communities. I mean, I have one of my postdocs who lives in Minneapolis actually helped to organize these programs where they were escorting kids to school if their parents were not citizens, so that the kids could go to school because the parents couldn't leave their houses because they were worried about getting just grabbed off the street, which was happening in our country. I mean, so on the one hand, the threat is that we're going to continue to see that. I mean, and clearly the Trump administration has all these plans to build holding centers across the country. I mean, in these crazy factories and like Amazon warehouses, right, where you just hold people. I mean, which some people are calling concentration camps, and maybe that's the right term for them.
But if you want to convey the seriousness of where that can go, yes.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And the thing is that, given how many of these spaces they're trying to build, it is very clear that the expectation is that Black and brown and non-American people in the United States are right to be feeling very, very threatened right now. And it's the people who are not, who have more comfortable status in the United States, who need to be pushing back. And my research is showing they are. The thing, though, is that we need to see more solidarity. There needs to be more work with workers, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited to be studying this strike, because that's where we might see connections with labor.
Yeah. I think America people have a hesitation of working with labor, I feel like, in America. Like, there's this...
Yeah. Well, I mean, here is kind of weird, but I've tried to talk to people about it, and a lot of people... I was so excited because I just signed up to be able to do this work with the people organizing Mayday Strong, and I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to get to work with them to track all the people who participate so we can understand why they're participating, to what degree climate is motivating them, what their demographics are, what they're actually doing in their communities, how they're connected. I mean, which is so great to have that kind of information. I mean, to the degree that they're willing to participate in civil disobedience, which is another interesting question that we're starting to ask. And a lot of people here are like, wait, what? There's going to be a strike? Why would people strike? So, I mean, I think that speaks to, the degree to which some people who come from the have class, if we can call them that, are just not paying attention to what's going on.
So one of the more unusual parts of my work is I get to work with some philanthropists. And one of the people I get to work with has said something to me that I think really I think we know, but I think it really is insightful, being from the have class themselves, is that it is not until you feel discomfort that you have that moment of like, wait, hang on, what's going on? And people spend their lives trying to create like absolute comfort, so they never have to touch the discomfort.
Right.
And so if you can isolate yourself in that way,
and they have a beautiful pillow around them.
Yeah, you are, and I think that's not even if we want to go to the like extreme wealth. I think that's true even when you think about, like, I talk about this with my husband a lot actually, where I'm like, you don't see the system because you don't ever hit that wall. Like, I'm constantly hitting that wall. Like, it like lives like on the side of me, so I feel it. Until you feel it, it's always gonna feel like you don't know that glass is there. I'm looking out a window until you like put your hand against it, right? You can people walk into glass all the time because they don't see it. Until you walk into that glass, sometimes you have to really trust people who tell you, no, there is glass there.
Yeah, and I think that's where the whole experiencing it firsthand,
exactly,
right? And I wonder how that's going to work out, because I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about recently is revolution. And I mean, when I say revolution, I don't mean just like the bloody overthrow of with the proletariat and of the bourgeoisie, like not a communist revolution, but there are many different types of revolution, right? But that is one type of a revolution. The other type of revolution is there's actually been research that talks about how fascism is also a revolution from above. And I think that that's really what the United States is experiencing right now. And we are standing on the precipice of falling down this hole that it is going to take so many lives and so much work to get out of.
Yeah.
So, so the question is, how do we get to the revolution that I'm most comfortable with is not the revolution from below, which is a revolution where that does also involve, workers rising up, and that does involve a lot of, a bloodshed. But there's also the revolution that is like a transformation of society, that kind of systemic change that can internalize these externalities, that can empower people to build a better democracy, that also does take the climate crisis seriously and basically wrest power away from fossil fuel interests.
Yeah.
And that's the revolution I want.
Yeah.
And the way I've been talking to people, I just was giving a talk to some students in New Jersey, and I said, but the deal is we're going to get the revolution we deserve, right? We either push back. I mean, that may be the title of my next book, but I'm not sure yet.
I like it.
I don't know. It's interesting because I was talking to an indigenous woman here who gave this amazing talk a couple of days ago, and she was like, oh, I feel like that seems really privileged to say that. And I was talking to somebody else who's really privileged, and they were like, I think that sounds like you're shaming me. And so I was like, maybe it's bad, but maybe we all need to get a little uncomfortable here, and we need to think about our positionality and think about the power that we have based on our positionality, because everybody has power.
Yeah.
I mean, even the powerless have power in their powerlessness right now. And it's all about finding people like you and building that solidarity. Without it, though, I don't know where we're going to go, and I don't know how we're going to get past this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what's interesting is, for me, this really uncomfortable notion. I remember when we were working on your talk as well, that we have to feel pain in order, and I know you don't say it with any glee,
no, I don't,
you know
exactly.
I mean?
It's not something that I'm happy about, but I do think that there's something to that fact.
And I guess the way that when I talk to you, the way that I think about it now is because the feeling that has been at the top of my mind recently is every time I think it can't get worse, it gets worse.
Yes.
Where you're like, oh, this was not rock bottom. This was just the stop on the elevator down, know?
I know. It's what are those, the deep diving people who have to stop and
yes, adjust.
And then they go deeper?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we keep doing that. I don't know how far
it's
we're
the reverse of the hedonic treadmill in social psychology. I don't know what the reverse of it would be, but we're on a treadmill down, not on a treadmill.
We need a name. We should name it. We need.
Yeah, I will leave that to you.
Okay, I'm going to work on that. That'll be a little project for me on the ride home.
But the thing for me is that when I listen to you and I feel that way, I remind myself that even if every time it gets worse, I also think, okay, well, it's just more fuel.
Yeah.
This is more fuel. I can't control it getting worse, but I can control whether that makes me feel helpless and therefore frozen, or whether it just gives me more fuel to want to do something.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've done in our work is we've gone through periods of asking a bunch of questions about emotions and how people are feeling about what's going on in the world, the climate crisis, or about politics. Now we ask both of those.
Yes.
And anger is the most amazing motivator, right? Anger and outrage, right? And so, during the first resistance to the first Trump administration, one of the things I said is we saw outrage in the streets was translated into activism and action and pressure and resistance in electoral politics. The thing is that so many people do not believe that electoral politics can get us where we need to go. And in fact, I also think that without some systemic changes to our political system, electoral politics can only help us swing the pendulum back.
Right.
And then we'll have the next election that is going to be the election that's going to determine the future of the world, right?
Yeah.
Every 4 years. And that we cannot continue to work like that.
No.
So instead, I think what we need to do is focus on this question about how we get to the empowerment we need so that there is enough power. I guess I just realized empowerment is basically about building power, which makes sense because it's in that word right there, right? Haha. But I mean, where do we do it and how do we do it? And I always figured that we would see it happening on college campuses because that's how it's been in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, and actually, some of my work recently was picked up in the New York Times, and the New York Times keeps getting me getting people to yell at me because I was so there's a new piece that just came out on Monday was where there are no young people pushing back. Where are the young people in the resistance? And the deal is it's because of the reasons that we talked about. And I said to this writer, I said, but if you think back to other periods where the young people were really active, there was a draft and young people were at risk of going to war.
Yeah.
And young people right now are just so numb to what's happening. And when they have tried, they have felt completely repressed, and they haven't felt like people come out to support them.
Yes.
So the question is, how do you get over that? And it's going to be outrage, but what is going to be the spark that leads to that outrage? I keep thinking that we're there, like you were saying, but I guess it's going to get worse. And that just leads us back to my being an apocalyptic optimist, which is that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And we're going to find our power. And I know that we will get out of this. The question is, how many people are going to lose their lives in the process? And there's no question that some people are going to. We're already seeing it. Yeah. We're seeing it with the climate crisis. I mean, and we've got a super El Nino coming, right? I mean, have you seen the reports? Oh, no, it's going to be bad. I mean, and it's interesting because I'm... I'm leaving. I quit. It's going to be bad, but, in some ways, a perfect storm can also help people to draw those connections between the crisis to democracy that we're seeing not just in the United States, but in other parts of the world as well, along with the climate crisis, and how the poly crisis can really motivate and mobilize the masses in the ways we need.
Dana, I love always chatting with you. I feel like in these moments where we're on that elevator down, it's really important to give us a way of reframing it so that we can find our power. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us this week. We really hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you did, please hit the follow button to make sure that you get next week's release. While you're at it, please leave a rating and a review.
Now, let's shout out to our fabulous team behind the pod.
Executive produced by Josie Colter.
Produced by Ben Beheshty.
Music also by Ben Beheshty.
Communications by Tara Cooper and Izzy Gladstone.
Curation by Deesha Chandra.
Hosted by Ben Hurst.
And Maryam Pasha.
And remember,
stay curious.